All right, welcome back to the pod. This is episode 4 of the Nueva Vida Group podcast. My name is James Pryor. My business partner, Jack Ballantine, is on, and one of our very special friends and guests is Mr. George Gray.
Great to have George on, isn't it? So today we're going to talk about holiday villa rentals, which for us, a few years ago, we did the odd one or two when we sort of started Nueva Vida, and we were always keen to help clients, but we never really found a trusted partner, did we? And been working with George now for 3 years. We've done sort of 10 to 15 high value rentals a year. It's been seamless, hasn't it, mate? So I think it's really good to have George on because clients are renting villas. They are trying before they're buying. They are sort of going to different areas of the world and sort of experiencing what it's like to have a home in those destinations. And it's been seamless. It's really important to us that we service clients well. Otherwise, we wouldn't necessarily do it. So, great to have George on. And I think it'd be good to sort of share those insights. We've got very similar clients and experiences, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, guys, for having me on. And everything you've just said, I completely echo. It's been great working with you guys as well, and your insights certainly into the sort of southern Spanish market and places like the Algarve has been very helpful for me as well and for my clients. And what we do, as you say, holiday rentals, sort of at all ends of the market, but very much at the higher end in the luxury sector and across a multitude of destinations across Europe and in the Caribbean. But certainly, I think we grew very organically as a business from a company who just had one villa in Portugal when we started to nearly 10 years ago now, and we've built that up again very organically over a number of years. Quite simply by delivering good outcomes for our owners and good outcomes for our guests. And like you say, people are renting homes, whether that's just purely for holiday, whether it's for business, whether it's try before they buy. In one of your earlier pods, obviously about relocating and people relocating from the UK, more and more people are moving out of the UK and also relocating from the US, etc. So people do need to try before they buy, and we're very much here to help them and support them in some of the finest homes in Europe and beyond when they want them.
All right, George, what are some, in your experience, what are some of the major pitfalls that some of your clients have experienced? And more importantly, what can you advise them to look out for?
Well, I mean, like every aspect of sort of property sales or rental, there is, the way the property is presented is probably the biggest thing by the person who is presenting it to you. Now, the first thing that comes to mind would be imagery. And how these people are portraying the house, whether they're making the images representative of its current condition, the size and the space of the property. I've seen all sorts of funny angles taken of villas to make them look bigger. And I've seen photos of villas taken 7, 8 years ago and sort of being advertised as current. And as we well know, houses don't stay the same over a number of years. Certainly not when they sort of have a high throughput of rentals over that period. So representative imagery is very important. It's something we're very, very conscious of. We use very, only photographers that we've kind of worked with before, vetted, and we know that they're putting the right, perspectives of the house on that we want to put on our website. Also, as well, probably the biggest thing are poorly maintained and looked after properties. Again, as I say, with lots of rental guests coming in and out, things do happen in these houses. Glasses get broken, furniture gets ruined, ripped, stained. And generic and general maintenance. I typically say to my owners that the sort of first 10 to 20,000 euros they spend a year on a property they won't actually see, because that's the kind of it's touching things up, it's making sure the taps are running, things like that, and it's ensuring that continued investment is happening, but equally that it's applied by a suitable management company and management team. Now, one of the things that is important for us in our business is ensuring we have that direct access to the house, that we control that management and maintenance process in the villas we rent, because that ultimately dictates the level of quality we deliver back to our guests. And one of the things I discuss a lot is the rental cycle. And it's that cycle of maintaining the house properly, the guests coming, enjoying their stay, coming back and returning year on year, which returns, income to an owner, and it keeps that cycle flowing very harmoniously. And I think that rental cycle really is the key to any strong rental business. And one of the ways that we kind of manage these expectations, let's say, of owners and guests alike, is by controlling the flow of money. As we all know, very much money dictates people's behavior and how they respond. And so we don't actually release the full amount of the rental back to the owner until after the guests have left, which ensures that, the guests have had a good time. Anything that's failed has been dealt with, or, if there's an issue that crops up, we know that we can get the right management and maintenance, and if needed, the owner's intervention in order to get everything sorted. Because as soon as you release those funds to the owner, their incentive to ensure that the rental goes, to plan and how it should do, reduces heavily. So that's a very, very important part of our business, and something we haven't ever compromised on.
Yeah, it's great, man. We've seen it in action. It's brilliant. I think one of the really good things I enjoy working with you guys is the access you have. I mean, we work with some very, very private clients, and I know they're always quite anxious and nervous about if they were to rent a villa, are, for example, the pictures out there far and wide, or is there something very special they can have that others can't have? And it amazes me every time with every inquiry we ever receive, the actual access you have to some of these homes. It'd be good to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a big part of my day-to-day sort of responsibility in the business now is getting this access. Last week I was actually in Greece seeing some new villas there. And this week I'm going to be down in the south of France doing the same. And, one of the things we do is we won't ever rent a property unless, as I said, we have that access. We know it, intimately. We know who's looking after it. Because, ultimately, again, that feeds back into the quality that we know we need to deliver to these clients. And, a lot of people say, the high net worth have, very, very high standards. But, in my opinion, everybody has high standards, whether they're paid 3,000 or 4,000 euros a week, or whether they're paying 300,000 or 400,000 euros a week. And for us, we certainly don't compromise, dependent on the price the client's paid. And it's very important for us to ensure that not only do we have the right access to the right homes, but that the quality is above the standard that we expect. And, I spend a lot of my time meeting new owners, which, a lot of which comes through word of mouth. I feel like in what we're doing here, it's a very, very heavily trust-led kind of business. And I think a lot of, people, ultimately, this is something you put your trust in somebody to deliver. And, I take that very seriously. So ensuring we have the right properties, and that we're meeting the right owners of these properties is a big part of what I do. And well, not a lot, but some of the houses we have in our portfolio would be what we call off market, so that they aren't visible on our website. They aren't freely available through different agents. They're marketed totally privately through a sort of us to the client, via email or WhatsApp. And, it's very sort of confidential, the brochure that we present to them. And, there are various reasons for this. The owner may not want it publicly advertised. The owner may be a very, very high net worth, ultra high net worth individual, or a political figure, somebody well known. And ultimately, it comes down to privacy and discretion, which is something that we operate with a lot in the business. We deal with a lot of sort of highly known clients, whether they're professional athletes or, very successful business people. And, we're used to dealing with those types of individuals, both on the owner side and on the guest side. And, we have no qualms working in that way with off-market properties, because we know we have the network to show these homes to. And quite often these homes are really the top tier and the pinnacle of the destination they're in. And, we actually took a new one on recently, in Comporta, actually, for a very, very high net worth and high profile business person. And that is, for me, one of the most spectacular properties in Portugal, or even in Europe.
It's amazing, that house.
Yeah, it is.
Just on that, we've done some very big deals in the past 18, 24 months. What are, and some of these, they're going there for a good time, or they're going there for family time. What are some of the things that you can do that you can add on to their experience? Because some clients like lots of things, some clients like to be left alone and just do their thing. What can you do, or what other things that can you provide for some of these high net worth clients?
Well, I mean, as you say, James, there's sort of no limit to what people want. And, equally, we like to say there's no limit to what we can provide. Now, one of the things, again, as a business, we've invested in heavily this year is our sort of concierge and experiences piece and our guest services. And, ultimately that's been led by strong demand from our client base for the extra stuff, from very basic things like transfers from the airport to private chefs, yacht charter, private jet charter, things like that, that we can obviously add on to support the rent of the property. I think is imperative. And again, not just necessarily at the upper end of this spectrum, but also in the middle of the market, people want a night off. Maybe it's a special occasion they're away for. They'd like to do a private chef, or they want a day out on the boat. And again, what my guest services team spend a lot of time doing is in location. They're building and developing their network to enable to provide these services. It includes like vetting chefs. One day this week, Thursday night, I've got dinner provided by a private chef, and it's basically a job interview for him to get work with us next year. So again, it's something we put a lot of time into to ensuring that the quality that we're delivering to the client, even though it's delivered essentially by a third party, is that of what we would want to provide. We've had some really interesting requests over the years. I think probably the hardest one, but one we were able to deliver. A couple were getting married last summer in the south of France, and they needed a silver horse that the groom could ride into the wedding. And we were able to find a silver horse, one of the right shade, from another part of France, and have the horse down for 2 days during the wedding. That was quite an interesting one. But
that beats us flying dogs over in a private jet for sure.
Yeah, well, as you say, anything goes really. But certainly when you're dealing with the high net worth individuals, and ultimately for them, it comes down to them ensuring they have what they want, and how you get there ultimately doesn't really matter. It's just ensuring that you deliver, and that's now, as I say, a very central part in what we do in our business. But ultimately we can do it all, even whether it's golf tee times or restaurant bookings, very very big. Again, in the south of France in the summer, St Tropez, it's impossible to get a table at some of these beach clubs, but again, we've developed those relationships and have that access where we can offer clients that service.
One of the things I've seen from our clients, I was just going to say, sorry, one of the things I've seen from our clients and their experiences is it's the little touches you do that actually make a big difference to their experience. I think being at the end of the phone for one of them is another. So having someone on your team or yourself literally able to respond within minutes to anything they need. They don't get that as much as people think they get that. And you actually, if you can do something, you do something. If you can't, you try and find a way of doing it. It's made a massive difference.
Yeah,
Wasn't it?
no, I think that's spot on, and again, I think a lot of people, in our industry, and when I say our, I mean across the sort of luxury property sector, very deal orientated, very deal driven, and once they've got that signature on the page, they're sort of as I said earlier in this podcast, about how people are sort of driven by what's happening with the money, and once they've been paid, their sort of incentive to keep providing that high level of service sort of drops. Whereas in our market, we want these clients to come back year on year, time and time again, and the only way we're going to achieve that is by consistently delivering a very responsive, attentive, and high quality service. And I think most of these people understand that not everything can always go perfectly to plan, but when it doesn't, that there's somebody there responding and reacting. As we had a situation in Marbella last year, which was completely beyond our control, and certainly was unsatisfactory and unsavory for the client. But, fortunately, we were all on the ground at that time, and we were able to respond accordingly to it and actually deliver a really, really, brilliant outcome for the client who subsequently booked again. So I think, as that level of responsiveness and reactiveness, in the event of, something not going totally to plan, I think is very important, and you can't really put a price on it.
In that situation, that literally was the point of difference. I think if other businesses would have backed off or maybe left it a little bit and contacted them later, but I think our combined responsiveness to that client was made all the difference to their experience, didn't it?
Totally. And, it's something we see often. And, your point as well about, the small touches, I think, they are really important because, most of these clients at this level, they can have whatever they want. They can buy whatever they like and they can do whatever they want to do. But I think the small touches that show you care and that you sort of taken time to know them and understand their preferences, I think they're very high level touches that I think go a long way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so obviously we've worked with you on a lot of the established markets. So Marbella, we've done lots of business together. We've done business in the south of France, ski resorts, all the sort of traditional, established, well-known markets. But what are the new markets you're most excited about, or you're seeing the most demand for?
Well, obviously, a few weeks ago, you spoke in very good depth and detail about Comporta, which is somewhere, personally, I think is got real legs into the future, and I believe in the next 10 years' time will be spoken about in the same sort of context as Ibiza, Mykonos, and some of those really really high end summer destinations in Europe. So I've got a lot of belief and faith in there. I won't go into much more detail because I know you already have. But another one would be Puglia on the Adriatic coast of Italy, sort of right down towards the heel of Italy, if you like. Really, really beautiful countryside, rolling countryside into really blue seas and beaches, whitewashed buildings, really, really good local food. Obviously, Italian cuisine. I don't need to go into too much depth about, but all of that sort of Italian heritage. And some very good golf as well. But typically a lot of these villas are sort of reclaimed and renovated masserias, which are sort of old farmhouses, or trulies, which are again very traditional, sort of Italian style, Pulian style buildings. But that's been very very popular for us this year, and I can see that happening again next year. And then another new one for us would be, in Greece, the Peloponnese region, sort of around, you probably know the place Costa Navarino. It's a very, very, well, it's fairly new, sort of in the last 5 years, but equally there's going to be a lot of Middle Eastern investment in that region in the coming year or two, in terms of infrastructure, airport, roads, etc. And, I think that's going to continue to go from strength to strength. Greece is really reliable for weather. Has probably, as a very wide season, not quite as wide as Marbella, but certainly sort of eight months of the year in terms of seasonal width. Great golf there. Honestly, some of the best golf I've played anywhere in the world, let alone Europe. And fantastic restaurants. We've just actually taken over 7 villas from the owner there in the last few weeks that are really impressive, 4 and 5 bedroom villas, newly built, really, really, really high quality product. But again, as it's a developing market, the sort of value for money you can get in these places is really, really good. And that sort of goes for all 3 of those regions I've just mentioned, Comporta, Puglia, and this sort of Peloponnese Costa Navarino region, because we know that everything, the cost of everything's going up generally, but that some of the rates and some of the prices I've seen for things maybe in the Algarve, etc., and some of the more established markets, Ibiza, it's just getting crazy. And I think for people who are just looking for somewhere to go and relax and have a good quality home to stay in, and go to local restaurants, down to the beach, maybe play some golf. These are really, really good options. Now, I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination they're cheap, but they're certainly very good value in the context of wider Europe.
I think I've noticed definitely the last 3-4 years, people are doing sort of 1 week of go crazy, they spend whatever they want to spend, and then actually, for a good chunk of their summer, it's probably a post-COVID theme, but after they sort of had that sort of go crazy week somewhere like Ibiza or St Tropez, they then sort of want to settle in somewhere for a little bit, into a home away from home, relax in somewhere relatively new. And I think Greece, to me, seems to be on a really good trajectory. It's really interesting. There's loads of great product being built and made. As we said with Comporta as well down in Portugal. I think people are eyes wide open to new destinations. It's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's very exciting. As a business, it's important for us to cover those major destinations and have access there. But equally, I'm very interested personally, but also in the context of the business of being the sort of market principal in these new destinations, because I think, they're not quite there yet, or a bit underdeveloped, and they don't have that platform to market that we could perhaps give to them, or give to the homeowners, give to the destination. And, one of the important things is that, as I say, I spend a lot of time in these places, and, I wouldn't take the business anywhere that I didn't necessarily believe in myself. So, I like to go and experience, what's around, what is there to do? Is it somewhere people are going to want to come? Before we actually sort of make a move into the market and start speaking to homeowners there. So I think, that everything that we're looking at, always comes from the right place. And, we work on personal recommendations on both sides of our business. And if somebody says to me, oh, you need to go and try out this place, check this place out, then we do. And, Puglia is a great example of that. We had some requests for Puglia 2 years ago, and I said, well, maybe we go and have a look and see if it's somewhere we want to work. And I really liked what I saw, so there's a reason why we ended up going down that route.
Such a common theme between our businesses. We're the same, as like we spent that week with you down in Comporta again this year, just to make sure we're really familiar and understand another market. And I don't think a lot of people are going out there and spending a lot of time seeing and experiencing new things. But I feel like when James and I feel like we live in an airport because we're going to and from somewhere to see something. It's a massive similarity between our businesses for sure. Well, thanks for that, mate. I think it's been brilliant.
Yeah, well, likewise, and really enjoyed it. And, obviously it's always a pleasure to do stuff with you guys. And, I look forward to doing more in the future.
Just a quick question, just in summary, just so people could know, because, we're getting inundated with inquiries at the moment. I think what's really impressive with you and your business is the sheer global presence of all your destinations. Just quickly summarize all the areas that you cover, because it is seriously impressive.
Yeah, and obviously we're growing all the time, and we have to keep up with demand. But we're a lot of the core markets in Europe. So Marbella, obviously in southern Spain. We're in the Balearic Islands. We have Mallorca and Ibiza. South of France, we're very strong in St Tropez, but all along the Côte d'Azur, Cannes, all of those Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferrat, we're very strong. And then Portugal was where we started out. We do a lot on the west coast, just north of Lisbon, obviously Comporta, the Algarve, and down in Italy we have some lovely houses in Sardinia, in Tuscany, and obviously Puglia as well. And then now in Greece and in the sort of west coast mainland of Greece. And then wider, we do plenty in Barbados, in the Caribbean. And, I think, we will continue to sort of move into those exciting new destinations as they crop up. But as you say, James, we are very global in what we do. And, we're looking at the moment for next year at places like Cape Town, again, very, very popular during the winter. It's worth mentioning we do also do some winter stuff in places like Courchevel, Verbier for ski chalets. Again, very important market for our European customers during the winter time. And I think we're sort of very focused, but equally focused in the right places. So I think we've got a really good selection of destinations for our clients. We won't always be able to service everybody, but we do feel we capture the right sort of quartile of our market.
And where can people find you, mate? Where can they find more information?
So we're albany-global.com. We've got a brand new website actually launching in about 4 weeks, which we're really looking forward to. It's going to be a great place to showcase some of the fantastic homes we have. It's going to be very user friendly for owners and for guests. Obviously Instagram as well, Albany Global on there. And I'm sure people will be able to find me in all of the other places they want to as well.
Yes, the Instagram isn't it, with the best looking has the best imagery, so it's easy to find, isn't it?
Well, it's the most representative imagery of the houses that we have. So, yeah, brilliant. No, but it's yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again, guys. Really enjoyed that.
Cool. Brilliant. Thank you, mate.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. That's it.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, like, share, and subscribe. Sweet.